Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have Kathryn Strachan. Welcome and good morning to you, Kathryn.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you. And I'm just going to tell the audience just a little bit about you, and then we're getting some sort of conversation. You are the Managing Director and owner of Copyhouse, which is a technology content marketing agency working with some of the largest tech brands in the world on amazing copy and content. You've got a mission to build a better businesses through honest conversations. And you're also passionate about creating a positive workplace culture and empowering employees to bring their best selves to work, which we are going to explore and dig a little bit deeper into the company culture and how you've done that within your business. But before we go there, I'd just like to understand a bit more about Kathryn and what you love about what you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that introduction. That's really great. I am Kathryn Strachan. I'm the Managing Director of Copyhouse. Copyhouse, we're a content marketing agency specializing in technology and fintech. I guess what I love about what I do is the leadership. So when Copyhouse started, it started from my freelance copywriting business. So I was a one-man band, so to speak. And one of the really great things about how we've grown is that as we've grown, I've been able to take people on this journey with me. So today I have a senior leadership team of 5 other people who I've more or less brought up through the ranks. Our content lead who oversees all of our copywriters, he joined us as a junior copywriter. And today he's the most senior copywriter that we have. So I guess what's been really amazing is being able to create opportunities for people, being able to lead a team, being able to really take care of my team and protect them throughout the pandemic, but to work together and to kind of create this company culture. So I guess to go back to your question, one of my favorite things about what I do is is to lead and to look after my team and to see their growth projections and to see everything that they do and achieve. I feel really honored to have my team and to be able to, have such a big impact in their lives.
That's an interesting response in terms of it was all about people, it was all about leading people. It wasn't about creating copy or content, which is obviously what your core business does. Now, you've experienced a huge amount of growth in the last sort of 12, 18 months. I think I've got some figures from you. 2021, you went from a team of 5 to 30. Your revenue grew by 280%, and you've gone into Europe now as well, which is just massive amount of growth on people and revenue. How have you managed people in that sort of context of such high growth and making sure that they're sort of with you and delivering, but also keeping that sort of culture together?
Yeah, I mean, we're fully remote. So I guess one of the biggest challenges is being a remote company. Being a remote company, you have to think and be more intentional about your culture. You have to put a lot of focus and thought into it. It's easier when you're in an office to just kind of let it naturally, organically happen. But when you are remote, you have to think more about that. And as we've grown, I obviously haven't been able to support every single individual person myself. But what I have done is I've created a senior leadership team who I've kind of raised by hand. So a lot of them have been with me for a long time, which means that I've then been able to pass on my ethos and I've been able to almost train them in how to be good leaders. And then they have been able to lead their teams. So kind of duplicating and multiplying myself in a way, teaching my senior leaders how to be leaders so that they can then be leaders to their team so that they can teach people who are, maybe part of their team how to be leaders. And that can then have a trickle down effect, I guess I would say. But it's also about, protecting the company as a whole. So, taking care of the team and trying to create things within the company that I would really like to have happen if I worked at Copyhouse. So, for example, we have an employee assistance program. So once a month, everybody gets an hour with a mental health provider, who's there to kind of just talk to them about things, whether it's the weather or the weekend or something deeper and darker. It's just somebody who can be a neutral third party, especially during a pandemic when, our normal support networks were under stress. This gave them the space that they needed to be able to emotionally offload onto somebody who wasn't then going to be worried about them, who wasn't then going to try to get more involved or anything like that, but could then just provide that emotional sounding board. We've had that program going for about a year now, and it's received some really positive feedback from the team, and has had a good impact on their mental health. So I guess, when you think about the company as a whole, it's thinking about, if I was an employee, what would I want? So we have a flexible working policy. We treat them like adults. We don't micromanage. We have a work from anywhere policy. We're just about to roll out paid sick leave, and, doing all these things that, if you worked there, would you want that to happen? What do you need to be, your most creative or your best self? I think if you think about it like that, it brings some empathy into leadership, even when you're leading quite a large group who you can't have that one-on-one deep personal relationships with. It would be impossible to have that with 30 people. But what you can do is you can create a team and a company culture that radiates that. You can take care of the wider organization as a group by doing things that you would like to have happen, and you can think about it as more than just, another number, and you can tailor it. And when issues arise, you can look for personal and bespoke solutions for that individual and help your leaders, the people you support, to then support that person, even if they're not a direct report for you. Does that kind of make sense? I feel like I've been rambling a little bit.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's good to hear that you've obviously got people at the core of how you want to manage and lead your business, and you've got some great sort of tools and great sort of programs in place. But also there's a deeper sort of thought on it all as well, and it's quite intentional. And I think a lot of companies could learn from that. What got you to that place where you've developed not only an ethos for it, but also think this is really important? Is it from your own experiences, good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is, right. I mean, you can't just end up somewhere without having had experiences in the past. And I've certainly had good bosses, and I've certainly had bad bosses. One of the reasons why I left agency world was because the flexibility I needed when my daughter was quite young. So I have a 4-year-old daughter. When she was very young, when she was, a baby, wasn't given to me. So I needed a lot more flexibility. But I like to think that I was a very valuable employee, or I would have been. But I was kind of pushed out from agency life. So I left and said, okay, well, I'm going to make my own way. But one of the really brilliant things about making your own way and making your own rules is that you can actually bring people with you. So you can bring people who maybe don't fit into the 9 to 5, into the normal boxes. So we have a really diverse team. And, my way of leading and running a company has been able to attract people who would struggle with 9 to 5s, who, perhaps live in really remote locations, so can't go into an office, or have critical illnesses, so can't do a 9 to 5 because they need to take more breaks, or they need to do this or that in order to be able to, be healthy and be at their best selves. And all of that has made a massive difference. And it's amazing how you can bring people with you. So, your way of looking at the world is often very attractive to other people. So other people need that new way of looking at the world, that new way of running a remote company, or office culture.
But it's interesting how what you're doing is, I would still say it's quite pioneering in this day and age. I think a lot of companies, certainly smaller companies, struggle to maintain that focus on their people. They tend to focus just on the sales and the profits. And that old sort of phrase of, your greatest assets is your people. And I think people say that, but I don't think people believe it. It feels like to me that you've really focused on the people, and by virtue of people, you're growing your business, you're being successful. You've got 280% revenue growth last year, and expanding, and probably going to continue to grow this year. What are the messages, what are the learnings have you had by focusing so much on the people that's driving your growth?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's been a lot of learnings, and not everything is, I haven't done everything right. So, there are things that I have said that I shouldn't have said, or, I've overreacted when I shouldn't have, or I've reacted too slow. And there's been a lot of learning opportunities throughout that. And I guess it's, one of the biggest learning opportunities is how to develop a culture and keep a culture, even as a company grows. So, to have a 4-person team is a lot different than having a 30-person team. And what is it that you can do so that you can maintain that, so that you can maintain your same ethos, your same way of looking at the world, your same way of leading. And I guess, it's still something that I'm working on, and something that, we think about every day. And, as we've grown, we've been able to also have more resources. So, we can roll out more programs, we can spend more money on, private insurance, or, things like this. We can invest more in the team. And how do we invest that? And, actively looking for those opportunities. I mean, I would say that company culture is probably something that I think about every single day. And I have a head of people who helps me with that as well. So between the two of us, we probably talk about some aspect of culture every single day. And are constantly working on evolving it and moving it so that it maintains and keeps up with the company. Because I think it's far too easy for your company to grow really quick, grow like wildfire. And the culture that you create at the beginning no longer fits. I mean, most things in a business are like that. When your company grows, you need to update them. So, you may need a new system because your company is now bigger. It's the same with culture. It needs to be evolved as you grow.
And I agree with you. And I think it's that starting with something at the core of it, which is obviously you and how you want it to lead and how you want it to manifest. And then bringing the right people along, which you're saying that you've got this leadership team, you've got a head of people, and have a real focus on culture and nurturing culture, because you've got to nurture it. You've got to feed it, you've got to invest in it to continue to grow. Now, we've had a conversation before, and one of your phrases, which I love, is you like to lead through love, which is a slightly unusual phrase in the context of a business. And first, I'd like to understand where you got that phrase from, or how that got created in you. So almost where did it come from? And then how does that manifest beyond what you've just talked about in terms of culture, in terms of dealing with people? So how do you lead through love?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to what I was talking earlier about treating your people like you would like to be treated, and caring for them and caring for their best interests. And, that's not always easy, because sometimes their best interest lies outside of Copyhouse. So, for example, one of our copywriters is leaving because they got a really great opportunity that they couldn't turn down. And as a leader, you actually want them to go for that. They came to me and they said, I'm really nervous about this opportunity. It's a big one for me. Like, I don't know if I should take it. And I said, you have to take that. You have to go for it, because that is what's best for your career right now. And it's not something that we can possibly offer you. So you have to go for it. And when you put their best interests first, I think that's leading through love. So, you put their interest first. I mean, another really great example is when the pandemic first happened. When the pandemic first happened, I didn't pay myself for 6 months because I wanted to take care of them first. I wanted to make sure that they were getting paid, and that all the money that we had was going back into the company so that we could create a sustainable future for ourselves. Ended up creating a very fast growing future for ourselves. But it's putting their interests first. So it's kind of a lot like parenting in some ways. I have a small child, so it's easy for me to compare it to that. But when you love your child, as most parents do, you put their interests first. So you may not want to watch that movie. You may not want to go to the play park. You may not want to go to soft play. I mean, most adults don't want to do these things, but it's good for them and they want to, and it helps with their development. So you do it. And I think it's the same when you're leading a company. I mean, you often do things that you may not want to do, but that are good for the rest of the team or that are good for that individual. And it's helping balance both like what is actually good in the long run for the company, as well as what that individual needs. And, being able to cater to that individual and, change the rules if it needs to. And we try to approach everybody on an individual one-on-one basis. Even if it's not myself that's dealing with them personally, everybody tries to make the adjustments that need to be made, or find solutions to problems rather than just saying you don't fit in our box, so you don't belong here. And I think it's about that.
So it's almost like servant leadership, isn't it? Putting people first and having a mindset of wanting to serve people, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think all leaders should be, because what's the opposite? The opposite is being selfish. It's putting your best interest first. And that doesn't sound like any leader that anybody would ever want to follow. People want to follow people who inspire them, who push them to be better, who, help them through hard times, who show them the way when the path is lost. That's who people want to follow. I mean, who would follow somebody who was only out for themselves, who only cared about their best interest or about profits or about any of these things? It's about, as a leader, you need to see the bigger picture. So obviously it's not always possible to just give somebody whatever they want. And that's not what I'm talking about either. It's about seeing the bigger picture and helping them to see it, helping them to understand how to progress their career, helping them to solve problems without creating immediate problems, without creating long-term problems. It's about helping them to grow and thrive and develop and be nurtured. And creating psychological safety, which is something that we hear a lot about. And I hadn't actually realized that I had done it, because it always seemed like this thing that was quite hard to achieve. Like, how do you actually create psychological safety? Until I was talking to one of my senior leaders, and they were telling me about how, it's really nice that people are able to voice their opinions. And then I realized that, yeah, I get challenged every day. My team constantly challenges my ideas. Nobody thinks that my ideas are 100% gold, because they're not. And they all feel comfortable enough to say, no, I disagree with that. I don't think that's the right way, or maybe we should try it this way. Or, sure, sometimes they do listen to me, but also sometimes they disagree with me. And I think that's a really healthy sign of psychological safety, when people feel that they can speak up, when, they can challenge somebody who is above them, whether it's me or senior leader, or, somebody who is above them, in the hierarchical line management, if we're going to look at it that way, but who can challenge and can voice ideas and, aren't afraid to make mistakes, and who can make mistakes and, can own up to them and can learn from them and see them as learning opportunities rather than you're going to get fired because you made one mistake. So I think leading through love is also about creating a psychological safety where people feel that they can make mistakes, where they can learn, where they're not scared to make mistakes, and where they can challenge people, even me. I love to be challenged. I love that my team tells me that, that's not a good idea, or, helps keep me on the right path, because what we're doing is we're helping to build an organization. And, if I just had everything exactly how I saw it, then it wouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, you mentioned a very valid point about creating psychological safety within organisations, and that's the core of teams, isn't it? Making them so people feel safe to take risks and to challenge people. Were you intentional about that, or is that just almost become a byproduct with how you approach things? And what other ways are you creating that environment where people can literally push the boundaries and therefore potentially make mistakes or failure, or whatever you want to call it, or places where they can literally challenge you or other people in the business in a safe way, so they're going to get sort of any recompense for it?
Yeah, I guess I've always been intentional about it. Like I remember one of my first employees, he'd always, actually he's a senior leader now, way back when, he would say, I know I'm new here, but, and then have an idea. And, I remember telling him a lot during like those first few months, you don't have to say that beginning part. You don't have to say, I know I'm new here, but you can just start with your idea because it's a good idea. And I think, by communicating such things, by having those conversations, I've been able to create that culture. I've been able to encourage them to speak out, to voice ideas, to have opinions. But I think it starts with the relationship, right? Like you can't just do that if you don't have a relationship. So I've always, taken a lot of time to build relationships, something that I've always been quite good at. In fact, I see our copy as creating relationships with helping our brands create relationships with their audience. So communication as a copywriter has always been one of my strengths. So yeah, I have been intentional about it. And a lot of it has been, done intentionally, though it's also been done organically and also been done through intentional thinking and just deep thinking and building relationships. The 5 levels of leadership. Well, the first level, it needs to start with a relationship. You need that relationship in order to be able to lead somebody. You can't lead somebody who you don't have a relationship with. It's just a simple fact. You can't do it. So starting there, building that relationship, taking an interest in them, getting to know them outside of work, what are their partners' names? What do they enjoy doing when they're not at work? What stresses them out? How do they respond? What do they need from a communication? In fact, we create user guides. Every employee, when they join Copyhouse, creates a user guide of how they like to be communicated with, what they need to feel supported, what they don't need to feel supported, what they don't like.
Each person who joins creates their own user guide.
Yeah, it's just like a one-page sheet. We've got a template. It's pretty easily done. Right before we started the big recruitment process, because we were 7 people, right before we kind of started a lot of hiring, we knew this hiring was coming. So how we reset the team was by asking everybody to create this user guide. And then one of the things that they get when they join Copyhouse is an email that kind of asks them to do that during the first week, to create a user guide that details how they like to be communicated with, what they don't like in communication, what people often misperceive by them. So for example, I'm obviously American. I can often come across as very blunt and direct, but I never mean it that way. So my user guide contains stuff like that. And that's really useful information to know, right? And it's normally stuff that you learn over time, learn by being around somebody. But it can take up to 6 months for you to really get to know that about somebody. So imagine if you came in day 1 and all that information was just handed to you about everybody you're going to be working with. And imagine if you could tell them back, I mean, this is exactly who I am. This is what I need. And this is what, how I work best. I
think that's a fantastic idea.
Hassle.
Well, no, and it's really upfront, and it's really, this is who I am as I know myself. And this is how I like to interact and work, communicate, and there's no second guessing, no sort of getting to know each other. And as in, obviously, you got to get to know each other, but it's done quite openly. And it's interesting because I do a lot of DISC psychometric tests with people, which is a way of identifying people's communication style. So in some ways, that does that as well, and it creates a way of, and I do it in teams. So teams know each other. What's the best way to communicate to this person, etc., etc. But actually, creating your own user guide, I think that's a fabulous idea in a company. That's brilliant. I really like that.
Yeah, we use psychometric testing during our recruitment process as well. So we use 7 personalities, and it kind of gives you a personality type. So we use that during our recruitment process, where we get to see, deeper than just somebody's CV. We get to see, what kind of personality they actually are and what makes them tick, and all of these really great things. And it's one of the ways that we test for soft skills during the recruitment process.
And so you've had huge amounts of growth over the last 12 months. And what has been your, I guess, top 1 or 2 growing pains? Because obviously nothing doesn't just grow perfectly. There's always a few pains and a few challenges. So what would, there's obviously other businesses out there who are in that sort of phase of growth. What can they expect from your own learnings of the last sort of 12, 18 months?
Yeah. I guess one of the biggest like growing pains was scaling the creative team before we scaled the account team. So, we were getting a lot of work coming in, so we were hiring a lot of copywriters, but our account team was just a two-person band at that time. And they ended up getting really stressed out. And if I could go back, I would have put in our second pod a lot sooner. So we do pod structures. So we have an AM, PM, and creative strategist in each pod. And I would have
Right.
put it in a lot sooner. But, at the time they were like, no, we can handle it. We can handle it. And we actually, I was like, well, we need to get you some support. And they're like, okay, well, why don't we hire a junior assistant? So we did. But because of how fast we were growing, we quickly needed somebody who was more senior. So we actually had to let go of that junior person, and not because they had done anything wrong, but because we needed to go into this pod structure a lot sooner. We needed somebody more senior, and it wasn't working. It wasn't alleviating their workload, and it was really quite a terrible moment. I mean, it's terrible to let go of somebody who hasn't done anything wrong, who is just not the right seniority level for where the company is at the moment and what it needed, because it needed to basically take half of the AM PM team's current workload and give it to another team so that their workload could be halved. So I kind of had to realize that and lead them through that, and they weren't very happy with me for it either. Took a lot of conversations, took a lot of convincing. I took a lot of difficult conversations to get it into that point. But once it did, it made such a massive difference. So next time, because we'll need to put in a third pod, we'll do it a little bit sooner. We'll also hire at the right seniority level. So I guess, as a leader, you need to see the bigger picture. You need to be able to lead your team through difficult times, because they're not always going to like you. I mean, going back to the parent analogy, your kids aren't always going to like you. You're going to have to do things that they do not like, that they do not agree with, but you have to get them to come with you. So it's convincing them that, this is going to be what's best for the organization in the long run. It's going to be what's best for you, because what I really cared about at that moment was reducing their workload, because I could see that they were overstressed and burning out. And I really desperately wanted to help them by reducing their workload. And I knew that this was going to work, but I needed them to come with me. So you have to be good at convincing people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. Also another parenting skill. But yes, you have to kind of sometimes lead them through those difficult points and get them to come with you and convince them that, this is really for the best in the long run. It was, and we're much stronger now for having gone through that. But I think, when you're thinking about growing your company, you be quite good. It is quite good to map out your organization, your org chart. So what does it look like in 6 months from now and a year from now? And who are those people that you need, so that you don't make the same mistake that I did of hiring somebody junior when you really needed somebody senior, and then having to go through that whole upheaval, because that would have been best avoided.
It's interesting. Two aspects I took from that is the fact that you're learning from your, I'll say, mistakes, but perhaps it didn't go as well as you thought, but you're learning from it and putting that into the future. But also it's been a bit more sort of stopping and being more strategic and try and map out the sort of next 12, 18 months, certainly on a people perspective, because we are living in a time where, jobs, or I'll say opportunities, is more candidate driven, and trying to get good candidates is more of a challenge. And I'm dealing with a number of businesses where we're trying to get them to look a bit further than 6 months, go about 12 months out, because it may take 6 months to even recruit somebody, depending on the industry that you're in. I've really loved talking to you today, Kathryn. I've loved your insights, I love your passion, I love your energy, and I love how you are leading with love, and have demonstrated it very eloquently and in such a short space of time. And I'm sure the listeners will get lots of value out of that. So if people want to connect with you and get in touch with you, how can they do that?
So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, find me under Kathryn Strachan. You can check out our website at copyhouse.io, or you can drop me an email at kathryn@copyhouse.io. I'd love to hear from anybody who's thinking about these things. I love networking. I love talking about company culture and leadership. So drop me a line, and we can get a time to meet in the diary.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time today, Kathryn. Much appreciated.
Thank you.